Let's try it again. 1, 2, 3, go. Kayo wachine, yo ho ho, hey, yo ho ho ho. Kayo wachine, kayo wachine. And the last part, kayo wachine, kayo wachine. Now, you won't get it the first time through, but we'll do it till we get it. After all, if you're in a canoe and you've got miles to go. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, go. Kayo wachine, yo ho ho, hey, hey, yo ho ho. Kayo wachine, kayo wachine. Hey, you know half of the song now. But let's do it once again to make sure we all know it. And maybe we should do it a little higher, because that is pretty low for some of the women to get. But I'm serious, women, don't try singing soprano-like. Put it in your growly voice. All women have a growly voice when necessary. My old voice, it's a 73-year-old voice. I cannot sing high like I used to. I sang tenor with the Weavers. How did I do it? Here we go. 1, 2, 3, go. Yo, wachine, yo ho, hey, hey, yo ho, kayo wachine, kayo wachine, hey. The second half of the song starts on a different note. Kayo wachine, yo ho. Well, let's do it. Kayo wachine. Try that. Kayo wachine. Yo ho, yo hey, hey, hey. Yo ho, ho, hey, hey, hey. Now we're going to put those two together. Kayo wachine, hey, yo ho, ho, hey, hey, hey. Near the end now. Kayo wachine, hey. Try that. Kayo wachine. Let's do the ending. Kayo wachine, hey. Kayo wachine, hey. Wow. Well, we start. I'm sure you won't remember it unless you have young memories. I got an old memory. You'll find out if you don't know already. When you get old, you lose your hearing. You also lose your memory. You lose your eyesight. You also lose your memory. You lose your teeth. You also lose your memory. Well, here's the second half of the song. Kayo wachine, hey, yo ho, ho, hey, hey, hey. Kayo wachine, hey, kayo wachine, hey. That's the second half of this song. Is the note we start on. 1, 2, 3, sing. Kayo wajene, yo ho ho hey hey hey. Kayo wajene, kayo wajene, hey. Now we'll see if we can do the whole song from the beginning. If you want it written out, I can give you a piece of paper and you can print it somewhere and see if you can recollect it later on when the printing comes out sometime later. Oh, that's that fool song that Seeger had us trying to sing with him. That's how we start. Yes, imagine you're on a lake or a stream and miles to go. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, sing. Yo ho ho hey hey yo ho 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 yo wajene kayo wajene kayo wajene yo ho ho hey hey kayo wajene kayo wajene hey. Well, I'm looking forward to hearing Oren Lyon speak. He came to the Clearwater and spoke to us briefly at our annual meeting, and I've never forgot what he said there. This man is one of the great men of North America, of the world.
That was your introduction.
Yawaha, Pete. Gonna lean on this chair. In 2003, when Condoleezza Rice and President Bush were beating the drums of war, you remember? Weapons of mass destruction, weapons of mass destruction. You remember that? I heard those drums. I heard those drums. There was a man that was standing up in a corner of I-90, 84, north, south, with a sign. One man. No war in Iraq. That was Pete. Yeah. Man of conviction. Always was and always will be. Thank you. And I remember, we're going to talk about canoes. He's reminding me about the canoes, Whichever side, I'm lefty. But sometimes you got to do this way. I was in a boys' camp, first time. Just a kid, I think maybe 16 or 17. I agreed to go up there and be a counselor. Didn't know anything about it. Up in the Adirondacks. And of course, being an Indian in a boys' camp, well, you got to know everything, or they think you know everything. So it came to be one day that we're going to go down and we're going to canoe. And I saw the canoes down there, and I think, boy, this is pretty nice. Never been in one in my life, So they said, Chief, all Indians are chiefs. Chief, You want to go down and go out on a paddle? I said, yeah, I would like to. And he said, you want to sit in the bow or in the rear? And I said, well, I'll sit in the bow. Okay. So I went up and I sat down facing him. Because I didn't know better. And he sat there, he's looking at me. He says, are you going to turn around? And I said, I just want to see if you knew how to get in that canoe. That's where I learned to be an Indian at that Boy Scout camp. But it was fun. It was fun. Anyway, we're talking about the river and talking about the Two Row and vessels. It is a river. We're on the river of life. We're tied together, covenant chain, peace, friendship. Long as the sun rises in the east, sets in the west. Long as the rivers run downhill. Long as the grass is green. 3 links, covenant chain. Jake Edwards, one of our young chiefs. Got 2 more young chiefs. Would you guys stand up so they can see you? They're picking up the load. I got a young Tadadaho here. That's a heavy load that he carries. It's tough. Tough trying to live a life of principle. You just be fighting all the time. That's what we do. So here it is. This is the belt, Calico Santa. 1613. It's 400 years now. It's going to be again. And so, when the Dutch first came up the river, there was an Englishman in charge of the boat called Half Moon. And he went as far as it could go upriver. It's in Mohawk country. And his name was Hudson. All he had to do was go up that river once, and they named the whole river after him after that. I don't know how they do that, He just once. He owns that river now. He was up there, and then he went back, and a few years later, Dutch came up with another boat, and there's a lot of stories in there of where they sat and who they talked with and the villages they stopped at and what they ate even. There's a lot of stories. You have to go back and you have to dig it up, but it's there. They keep records, What our brother knows how to write, and he keeps good records. So anyway, when he got up there, they said that they wanted to make an agreement to trade and commerce in a peaceful way. And our leaders at that time said, we've been watching you and it doesn't look like you're going home. So maybe we better talk about how do we get along before we talk about trade. And so they began a long discussion. That discussion went over a period of probably 50 years or so. And it was being refined all the time. But basically what they said was, it's a good thing that you want to trade in a peaceful way, So how shall we greet one another? And they said, well, it's very respectful and great love if you call us Father. And they thought about that, and they came back and said, it's true enough. They said, Father loves his children. He said, but he also has the responsibility and the authority to chastise. And we think it's probably better if we call one another brother. So that's where the term brother comes from when we speak of our brothers across the sea and across the water, or our brothers. And it's an inclusive term. It means all the people. So they agreed. We will call one another brothers. And we said, you have a big ship. You have a lot of people. You have a lot of religions. You have a lot of color in your people. Our canoe is small, and it only holds our people, and it holds our way of life and simplicity. We live a simple life, but it is what we have. So we'll have our two vessels, and your ship with all your people, your laws, your religions, our canoe with our people, our way of life. Because they didn't call it religion, they call it the way you live, day to day, a way of life, and our laws, and our rules, and our people. And they thought that was a good idea, and they said, this river that we travel on, this river of life, we should go down this river side by side. And so they agreed with that. And they said we should tie our vessels together. Something strong. And they talked about rope. And they talked about iron. Well, it would rust eventually and disappear. And eventually they decided on silver, because you have to polish. You have to remind people. So they agreed there would be a chain, silver covenant chain. And if you look in your history books, all you teachers out there, you'll see over 350 years of a discussion of the chain. 3 links, 1, 2, 3. Peace, friendship. As long as the sun rises in the east, sets in the west. As long as the water runs downhill. And as long as the grass grows green. And the two vessels tied together. That's a long time. The sun's still rising in the east, setting in the west. Water's still going downhill. It's also going down. And the grass is kind of brown now. It's turning brown. Our leaders were just out to Ogallala just a week and a half ago, and flying from Denver up to Rapid City. That streak of snow that come around here. But from there north was all brown. No snow, no water. Last year they had a very, very hard time. This year they're going to have a hard time again. And so the discussion here now is starting to change. And they said a lot of things. And they said, how will we keep this discussion? And our leader says, well, we always use these beads, this wampum, and we'll make a belt, and you write your letters. You write your letters and keep your records, and when you lose them, come back to us and we'll have the belt and we'll remind you what we said. 1975, we were having problems at Onondaga, if anybody remembers. Pretty serious problems. And there was a man in the White House called Theodore Mars. And he wanted to come up to Onondaga. He was very interested in the Six Nations. And we said, we had gone down to greet him and invite him, actually. And he said, yes, I want to come up. And we said, is there anything that you would want to address specifically so we can prepare? He said, I want an explanation of the Two Row Wampum. That's 1975. So your mind goes back to what they said 400 years earlier. When you lose your records, we'll have our belt and remind you. And we have a picture of Dr. Mars standing there and all our old leaders holding the belt like this. And he was a good man. He was a good man. He had something in mind for us. Never did quite come around. But in this belt, there were a lot of words. And I said, well, we make this agreement. In the future, they said, how will our children know you? How will our children know each other? And the leaders replied, you will know us by the way we dress. Now, that was an instruction to our people to maintain yourself, maintain your integrity, wear your clothes so you know who you are. And so that's why you see our leaders and our people wearing our clothes. We can wear your clothes too, we do. But we always have our clothes. And we keep our customs, and our ceremonies. The ceremony is probably the strongest thing we have because it holds our nation together and it has to be in our language. And these young men here, those two young men there, this young man here, are becoming fluent in their language. The leaders, which is what we have to have. And of course you remember that during the course of time, when our brothers kind of forgot this, they began to try to take the language away. Missionaries came among our people, trying to change our beliefs. Yet our leaders hung on. And all that time, they took our children, put them in schools. Started from 1875. They put them in schools and tried to beat the language out of them. Tried to change them. Little children. Carlisle Institute in Pennsylvania. Go down there sometime and look at the graveyards. Look at the graveyards of the children that didn't get home, and look how small graves there are there. Our children. They were being changed, but they weren't successful. I'll just move forward very fast, past the First World War and into the Second World War, and things were very, very bad for the United States in the fight. And they were losing the battles here and there, especially in the Pacific. And his father was there. He's a good soldier. He's also a boxing champion of all of the military, 147 pounds. That's his father, and a great soldier. And things were bad, and they had to communicate. So they found out that Indians had kept their language. And so you had the code talkers speaking openly across open lines, one Indian talking to the other in their language, saving thousands of American lives. And remember, these are the very same language they were trying to wipe out. Remember, or if you didn't remember, think about it. Consequences. You were lucky. Our people fought back and didn't lose their language. You were fortunate. Probably a lot of you wouldn't be here right now if it wasn't for that language. Just want to remind you, like this belt. This belt is a covenant between two peoples, and you're the other half. It's very important. And if your leaders want to ignore it, you shouldn't. It's a responsibility you have to be there. And I'm so glad I see so many here. I'm glad you're here. I greet you. We have an agreement. I'm going to polish it. Polish that chain. 350 years of history. If you go through it, our good friend Rick Hill, he's a funny guy, Rick. He went and took it upon himself to find out all the meetings where they used wampum. And there's 3 volumes of meeting after meeting after meeting where our brother used wampum, made the belts, made the strings, exchanged them, made the protocol. On the eve of the revolution, 1775, they wanted a meeting, peace meeting, Albany. Our leaders went there. And they said, we want you to join us in this coming battle. And our leaders said, we know your father. We know you, your children. We don't think it's a good idea to get in between a father and son fight, as you well know. And they said, good, because that was our second request. If you don't fight with us, don't fight against us. And so they struck a treaty at that time. And the speaker for the Continental Congress said, and the full membership was there at Albany, 62 members, said, in 1744, you instructed us to make a union like yours. We are now going to take your advice. We're going to make a union like yours, and we are planting this tree of peace here, and we are kindling this fire. Your words, not ours. Did you know that? Of course not. That's real history, one that you don't know, just like this belt. And our men said, we agree. We agree with this. They said, but you will see our men in the field on either side. And when you see them in the field, remember, they are not fighting as a nation or as a confederacy. They're fighting where their heart took them because they are free men, and we can't tell them what to do. And so it was that the Mohawks fought heavily on the side of the king. And the Oneidas and the Tuscaroras fought heavily on the side of the colonists or the Americans. Prior to that, you know, when you said American, they were talking about an Indian. But now they said, we're Americans. we're free. We're free. Pete was talking about our little square of